What a year 1996 was. At the box office, people were watching aliens destroy the White House, tornadoes tear across the screen, and Tom Cruise hang from the ceiling in Mission Impossible. And unlike today, you didn't have to look too hard to find something worth watching. So I picked 10 of my favourite films from 1996 that still hold up in 2026. As always, this is just my list, so if I missed one of your favourites, add it in the comments. The Rock is one of those movies that makes me miss the 90s the most. It really was cool. This was Michael Bay's second movie, and it already had almost everything that would become his trademark. Big action, sweeping camera moves, and explosions. A lot of explosions. The setup is simple. Rogue Marines take over Alcatraz with chemical weapons, and an out-of-his-depth weapons expert has to stop them. The only person who can help him is the one man who ever escaped from the island. Nicolas Cage in his blockbuster debut, and Sean Connery. Together they helped turn The Rock into the fourth highest-grossing film of 1996. The script also gives the movie more than just action. It has plenty of story without getting buried in exposition. Ed Harris's General Hummel is treated as a tragic war hero, not just a simple villain. And both Connery's John Mason and Cage's ridiculously named Stanley Goodspeed get enough character moments to make their partnership work. Along with the credited writing team, Jonathan Hensleigh, Aaron Sorkin and Quentin Tarantino also worked on the script. Before David O. Russell became known for films like Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle, he was making smaller, independent-minded movies like Flirting with Disaster. The movie stars Ben Stiller in one of his best roles, as a man who was raised by adoptive parents and decides, as an adult, to find his biological parents. That search turns into a cross-country trip with his wife, played by Patricia Arquette, an adoption agency worker, played by T. Leone, and his newborn son. Part of the fun is that you can never quite predict where the movie is going next. The humour comes from the awkwardness of that situation, and from the screwball characters they meet along the way. The movie keeps pushing those encounters further until everything builds into a very absurd climax. To watch that happening is a lot of fun. Sling Blade is the film Billy Bob Thornton wrote, directed and starred in. Thornton plays Carl, a developmentally disabled man from Arkansas who has spent most of his life in a state mental hospital. After being released, he returns to his hometown, finds work repairing engines, and becomes close to a young boy named Frank, Frank's mother Linda, and her friend Vaughn. For a while, Carl seems to find a small place for himself in their lives, but that peace is threatened by Linda's abusive boyfriend, Doyle, played by Dwight Yoakam. The film was made on a tiny budget of around $1 million and still became a box office success, earning more than $24 million. Thornton was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, Best Actor and Best Adapted Screenplay, which he won. But Sling Blade was not nominated for Best Picture. Maybe it was simply seen as too small for that category, and that is a shame because it absolutely deserved to be there. I have already talked about Bound in other videos, but let me repeat myself here. By the way, this is the Wachowskis before The Matrix making their first feature. We have Gina Gershon, Jennifer Tilly, and Joe Pantoliano. Tilly plays the girlfriend of Pantoliano's mobster, and she wants to escape her situation. Gershon plays an ex-con hustler, and the two women quickly become romantically involved. They see a chance to get out together, so they come up with a plan to steal $2 million from Pantoliano's character and run. Gershon and Tilly's chemistry pulls you in, but Pantoliano is just as important here. His performance keeps shifting from scene to scene, and sometimes even inside the same scene. He brings a lot of intensity to the role, and he probably deserved even more credit for it. Bound is mainly a thriller, but the Wachowskis also mix in other elements without losing control of the tone. There is plenty of tension here, but the film also knows when to let in a small comic moment. And here we have another directorial debut, this time from Wes Anderson. I cannot say I am a huge fan of his work, but I liked Bottle Rocket back in '96, and I still enjoy going back to it. The film grew out of a 30-minute short and follows three friends, played by Robert Musgrave, Luke Wilson, and Owen Wilson, who decide to pull off a robbery and go on the run. The problem is they are not exactly built to be tough criminals. They are just starting their criminal career, and of course nothing goes the way they planned. Bottle Rocket did not make much money at the box office, but the generally positive critical response helped bring attention to both Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson. And this is where Wilson already shows a lot of what would later make him work so well on screen, especially his comic timing and very specific delivery. Crash may be the strangest movie on this list. David Cronenberg's film is about people who find sexual pleasure in car accidents, and he pushes that idea as far as he can. Based on J.G. Ballard's novel, the movie is still every bit as polarizing as that premise sounds. It also won a special jury prize at the 1996 Cannes Film Festival, with the award widely described as recognizing its originality, daring, and audacity. The story follows James Ballard, played by James Spader, after a car crash pulls him into an underground subculture of people who share the same obsession. That group includes characters played by Holly Hunter, Elias Koteas, Deborah Kara Unger, and Rosanna Arquette. The film keeps placing sex and violence right next to each other in a way that can easily be too much for more old-fashioned viewers. Roger Ebert described it as a porno movie made by a computer, while also calling it challenging, courageous, and original. And that is probably the best way to look at Crash. It is cold, uncomfortable, and very hard to recommend casually. But it is also one of those films that could only have come from Cronenberg. Swingers is one of the best comedies of the 90s. It is funny, very quotable, and often a little bittersweet, especially if you have ever been single, heartbroken, or trying to start over somewhere new. It also helped introduce Jon Favreau, who wrote the film and stars as Mike, Vince Vaughn as Trent, and director Doug Liman to a much wider audience. Mike is a struggling comedian from New York, now living in Los Angeles and trying to get over a breakup. His best friend Trent is the opposite. He is loud, confident, and always trying to drag Mike out of his slump. First, that means a disastrous trip to Las Vegas. Then it turns into a series of nights out, bad decisions, and attempts to rebuild Mike's confidence. And of course, this is where lines like "Vegas, baby" and "You're so money" come from. Swingers also arrived right in the middle of the swing music revival of the 90s, and the soundtrack became a big part of its identity. You get classic tracks from names like Count Basie and Dean Martin, along with music from Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, who also appear in the film. This is real cult movie territory. Next up, we have what I still think is Danny Boyle's best film, and one of the defining British films of the 90s. Trainspotting takes us into the economically struggling Edinburgh of Irvine Welsh's novel, with Iggy Pop's "Lust for Life" blasting over the introduction. Ewan McGregor plays Mark Rentboy Renton, who decides he is going to quit his old life. Around him are his friends: Simon Sickboy Williamson, played by Johnny Lee Miller, Daniel Spud Murphy, played by Ewan Bremner, and Francis Franco Begbie, played by Robert Carlyle, who is simply violent. Renton tries to get through withdrawal by shutting himself away and waiting for the worst of it to pass. When he tries to stay clean, he heads back out with his friends, meets Diane, played by Kelly MacDonald, and only later finds out how young she really is. The rest of the film follows this group as they keep trying and failing to change their lives, while also getting pulled into a deal that might finally give Renton a chance at something normal and safer. Irvine Welsh's novel had the kind of structure that made it feel almost unfilmable, which is somewhat understandable if you have read the book. But after Trainspotting, anything in British film seemed possible. And for the very end, I saved a film I completely missed back in 1996 and only caught up with very recently. American Buffalo is based on David Mamet's stage play. Dennis Franz is Donnie, the owner of a downtown junk shop. Sean Nelson is Bobby, a younger man who spends time around the shop. And Dustin Hoffman is Teach, a seedy layabout who never seems to want to go home. The setup is simple. Donnie sells a buffalo nickel to a customer, then starts to think it may have been worth much more. So Teach pushes him toward a plan to rob the customer and steal it back, along with any other rare coins they think he might have. But of course, the robbery does not exactly go according to plan. When American Buffalo was being developed for the screen, Al Pacino was originally attached to the role of Teach, the same part he had played on stage. But when Pacino did not respond quickly enough, the role went to Dustin Hoffman instead, and Hoffman is really good here. His Teach is grubby, sleazy, and always moving, with a little bit of Ratso Rizzo in him. The film did not make much noise when it came out. Reviews were mixed, it made very little money in theatres, and today it feels almost completely forgotten. Which is a shame because the acting is strong and the film stays gripping from start to finish.